Hello viewers, welcome to this episode of Healthy India. Today we will try and understand more about a very common problem that all of us may have faced once or twice or many times in our lifetime. Sleep disorders. You know, sleep is beautiful. Sleep is important for the human body. It is important for our body physiology. Sleep refreshes, it restores, and it rejuvenates. So, to understand more about sleep and the disorders associated with sleep, we have an expert panel for you. And as usual, we have tried to choose the best of the best. And we are very grateful to you, sir, for joining us. We start with Professor J.C. Suri, who's the Chief of Pulmonary and Critical Care in Sleep Medicine at the Fortis Vasant Kunj Hospital, plus runs one of the finest centers of sleep disorders in Delhi. He was earlier the professor and head at Safdarjung Hospital, the Mahavir Vardhman Institute of Medical Sciences. It's a privilege to have you here, sir. Thank you for joining. We have another stalwart, Professor Khilnani, who is the chairman of the Sleep Disorder and Pulmonary Medicine Unit at PSRI and was a professor and head at the All India Institute of Medical Sciences of the same department. So two stalwarts, and we have another stalwart who's joining us online, and that is Professor Anant Mohan, who currently heads the Department of Pulmonary and Sleep Medicine at the All India Institute of Medical Sciences. So welcome, gentlemen, to the show.
Thank you.
We'll start with Dr. Anant Mohan, understanding about normal sleep first. Before we go into sleep disorders, what is the normal sleep pattern? A little bit in layman's terms about normal sleep physiology. Dr. Anant Mohan, please.
Okay, thank you, sir. As far as normal sleep is concerned, as you have rightly mentioned, sleep is extremely important for the normal physiology of our body because it is during the sleep time that the body cells and organs, they rejuvenate, they regenerate, they repair themselves, and they recharge. So, and they take some rest. So it is extremely important. It is for a normal adult, probably around 6 to 8 hours of sleep. So a normal person spends almost 1/3 of his life actually in sleep. That is one thing. That range may vary from person to person, from age group to age group. In the young, in infants, we know that they sleep most of the time of the day as well as the night. And gradually, as the age increases, the amount of sleep requirement also reduces. But at least 6 to 8 hours, probably some say 6 to 9 hours per day is required for optimum repair and rest for the body. As far as the stages are concerned, sleep can be divided broadly into two broad stages. One is the two types. One is the non-rapid eye movement, that is the non-REM sleep, and the other is the REM sleep. So these two together, then the non-REM sleep can be further classified into three further stages, 1, 2, and 3. Hence, if we start, when a person lies down to sleep, then he closes his eyes and he goes into the stage 1 of the non-REM sleep. This is a light sleep when his eyes are closed, but he can be easily aroused. At this point, this lasts for somewhere around 5 to 10, 15 minutes usually. And during this time, he can be easily woken up at that time. Then it further goes into the stage 2 sleep, which lasts again for anywhere between 5 to up to 25 minutes. And at this point of time, some physiological changes occur in the body. For example, lowering of the body temperature, lowering of the heart rate. So these simple physiological changes occur at this point of time. This is also light sleep, and he can also be woken up from this easily. Then he goes to the second stage of sleep, to the deep sleep. The deep sleep is the one which can last for anywhere between, say, around 30 to 60 minutes or so. At this time is the one when if he is woken up, then he can be a little bit of confused at that point of time because he is in a relatively deep sleep. Then this further goes into the REM sleep, that is the rapid eye movement sleep. This is typically it occurs after around 90 minutes of the initial non-REM sleep. And initially it may last only around 10 minutes or so. This is the time when he is in deep sleep. He may have dreams at this point of time. And gradually, as the night progresses, the duration of REM sleep also increases. That is why the duration of REM sleep is maximum in the early morning. And that is where he gets the maximum deep sleep, which is refreshing sleep. So these are broadly the main stages of sleep.
So which part of this sleep cycle does the body actually heal? Because you see, some parts of the body are functioning throughout sleep. Obviously, our heart, our lungs, in fact, all parts are functioning at a different level. So which is the most important in terms of clinical aspect out of these parts? And then what is the importance of dreams? A lot of people say that they wake up dreaming, they had a bad dream. And does that indicate poor quality sleep, or does that indicate good quality sleep?
Well, it is the deep sleep which is more important. And as far as in the deep sleep, the body functions get restored. The body is hypotonic. The muscles are loose and relaxed, and that is where all other the heart is functioning. The heart rate is at the minimum, and in the REM sleep, actually the brain is working, and that is the time when the brain is slightly overactive, and that actually helps to restore the preservation and the functions of the brain. In fact, it is said in children, the REM sleep, which is longer, actually is good for the brain functions at that point of time. So basically, the excitatory neurons and the functions and the discharges that happen in REM sleep are actually beneficial for the brain, and that probably also leads to the dreams and the dreams which come up during that part of the sleep.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We move to Dr. Khilnani, sir. So, Dr. Anand briefly mentioned about duration of sleep. A common question in the outpatients. Patients always ask us, they also read about some leaders sleeping only 5 hours, 4 hours, and they wonder why they can't do that. And there are others who say that they don't feel refreshed even with 8 hours sleep, 9 hours sleep. So, what should be a normal expectation for a normal person? How much should the person be sleeping?
Thank you, Amrish, for having me here. Very important question that you have asked. It's a very common thing that I had a sound sleep. Yeah. And there's nobody on this earth who doesn't have disturbance of sleep. That is physiological. But one has to understand that in a person who does not have any sleep disorder, 6 to 8 hours of the sleep is required for rejuvenation of the body, metabolites, and mind and body both. Now, there are several disturbances which can occur during the sleep. One is that one is not able to go to sleep. Second is that he may get up in between because of disturbance. And third is that he may wake up earlier than expected. That is, sleep time is much less. And this could be because of the somatic conditions. Somebody has pain or some difficulty or headache or abdominal pain. That's we are not talking about. It can be because of some psychological issues, and it could be because of something called that sleep disordered breathing. Now, this of course is going to be a point of discussion. So it's not that everybody requires 8 hours of sleep. Some people do well with the 5 hours of sleep. This could vary from person. The 6 to 8 hours is an average which is taken. And if we talk about the disturbed sleep, from the point of view of sleep disorder breathing, that I guess we will be discussing later, but this is a sleep which is fragmented sleep. That is, your sleep is fragmented. Now, we understand what is fragmentation. One fragmentation could be where person is aware that he got up at 1 o'clock, was not able to go to sleep, or got up at 3 o'clock, not able to go to sleep. Another fragmentation occurs at the subconscious level. That is, that occurs typically in obstructive sleep apnea, where this actually because of the obstruction to the breathing and deoxygenation and the choking which occurs during the deeper part of the sleep, the person actually wakes up at the subconscious level. In those circumstances, he might sleep for 9 hours, but actually his sleep is not complete, and that is what we are going to discuss. I guess this is a big question that you will be asking me and other panelists. So I'll stop here.
But if someone says that my normal sleep requirement is 9 hours, is that normal? I mean, is that okay, or we should?
By and large, okay. So I didn't want to go into that. If we talk about sleep disorder breathing, there are largely two types. One is obstructive sleep apnea. One is obesity hypoventilation syndrome or other hypoventilation syndrome. So the people with obstructive sleep apnea may sleep for 9 hours or 10 hours because
Yet not be refreshed.
since there is a fragmentation of sleep at a subconscious level,
We'll come back to that.
they feel groggy in the morning. Similarly, in obstructive sleep apnea, basically there is hypoventilation and raise in carbon dioxide in the blood. That also leads to the longer sleep. Historically, Kumbhakaran, those who are obese.
Yes.
So they may sleep for 10 hours, still they get up groggy in the morning, their sleep is not rejuvenating and they feel sleepy the whole day and a lot of other things.
Despite theoretically having slept 9 hours, so
9
that's
hours,
the point.
yeah, that's right.
Fantastic. So I come to you, Dr. Suri. Dr. Suri, as you know, has been the pioneer of sleep disorder research in India. And his work in this area is well recognized. And I would like to ask you, it's not just obstructive sleep apnea. There are many kinds of sleep disorders. Of course, our focus today will be on sleep apnea. But would you like to enunciate for the audience what are other kinds of sleep disorders, the whole list, and are they really common? So when we discuss a subject here, A, it should be common. B, it should have serious consequences. And C, we should be able to do something about it. These are the three criteria for public health issues. So do you think sleep disorders are a public health issue? We'll talk about the consequences later. But in terms of their being common, and other than the sleep apnea, can you explain briefly what are the varieties?
Thank you, Dr. Ambrish. Good morning, everybody. And thanks for this invitation. As has been discussed just now, that sleep is an important part of our life. We spend 1/3 of our lifespan sleeping. And there are 3 or 4 important things regarding the goodness of a sleep, or what you call that, if somebody is saying a useful sleep or a meaningful sleep, that is, one is the duration. Second is the continuity, that means it is not broken. Third is the quality of the sleeps. So when we are talking about sleep disorders, they may be related to the duration of the sleep, they may be related to the quality of sleep, continuity of sleep, sleep disruption, and last very important thing is the timing. At what time, even if you are sleeping the right duration, right amount, what is the timing? Some people are sleeping, say, from 10 o'clock in the night to 6 o'clock in the morning. So other one can be 11 to 7, 12 to 8. And there are people who may be sleeping from 2 a.m. to 10 a.m. in the night, or 3 a.m. to 11 a.m. So that results in loss of lot of sunlight exposure in the morning. So timing of sleep is also very important.
So shift workers and
yes,
these days a lot of people,
the shift workers,
call center
and
workers, so many.
So
Doctors.
duration, timing, continuity, and the disruption. So these are important components. And when we talk about sleep disorders, so when we say that there is a sleep disorder, so when there is a condition which either interferes in you getting the right amount of sleep or the right quality of sleep, or you are not getting the right timing of the sleep, then you are supposed to be suffering from a sleep disorder. Now, how common are the sleep disorders and how diverse they are? There are about 80 types of sleep disorders recognized, and
80 types.
80 types of sleep disorders,
Yes.
which have been recognized so far, and still we are finding the newer one. But all of them are not common. There are about 5 to 6 groups, which have the disorders have been divided for the sake of convenience. And amongst them, the most common sleep disorders are the insomnia group. So what is insomnia? Insomnia is inability to get into sleep, inability to maintain sleep, or early morning awakening. So these 3 things are there. The person is said to have insomnia. Now, along with this, if somebody has problem in getting into maintaining sleep, then there should be daytime consequences. That means it should lead to daytime fatigue, tiredness, sleepiness, and other consequences on the health. So that's very, very important, when we are talking about insomnia as a disorder. You all know that we have bad nights. It is very common to have in between bad nights. But once it becomes more persistent, that means you are having more than 3 days a week for more than 3 months, your sleep is disturbed in terms of duration and quality, then it is going to cause daytime consequences, not only on the immediate terms, but on the long-term basis. The second group of disorders are when you are excessively sleepy. The first group, where you are not able to sleep or able to sleep, get into sleep or maintain sleep. The second group is that despite having sleep at in the night, you are excessively sleepy during the day. And in this, there are multiple disorders, you know. The important ones are the narcolepsy, and then we have some rare disorders like idiopathic hypersomnolence and Klein-Levin syndrome. So these are one of the other important condition which is associated with the excessive daytime sleepiness is the sleep deprivation or the sleep lack. That means when you are not taking adequate amount of sleep on your own, you know, because of your involvement into social activities, professional activities, you are not getting adequate sleep, you know. In fact, now according to the National Sleep Foundation in US, sleep lack is considered to be one of the most important health risk leading to various consequences, metabolic consequences, cardiovascular consequences. So this is the second disorder. The third disorder is what you call sleep disordered breathing. So what we were discussing, or sleep apnea. So what exactly sleep disordered breathing means? When there is a problem of breathing in sleep, either somebody stops breathing in sleep or the breathing becomes too shallow to maintain our oxygen levels and remove our carbon dioxide from the body. So these are.
We'll come to that in detail.
Yeah. So this is just a group. We are not talking. Third, the fourth group is what is called the circadian rhythm. So this is linked with your timing. You know, if your sleep timing, food timing, meal timing are not in sync with the environment, then you are having circadian rhythm disorder. The fourth important group is the parasomnias, you know, the abnormal behaviors in sleep, like somebody is walking in sleep, talking in sleep, you know, there are dream enactments, you know, which we normally don't see. So these are the parasomnia. And last major group is what the abnormal movements during sleep, what we call periodic limb movements. These are jerky movements and you know, repetitive jerky movement during sleep, myoclonus, and restless leg syndrome, periodic limb movement. So these are the common 6 sleep disorders, and amongst them, the most common disorders are the insomnia group, which may constitute about 10% of the population when we are talking about chronic insomnia. And of course, acute short-term insomnia, about 35% of the people have. And the second group is the sleep disorder breathing, which is again very common. About 5 to 10% of the population is suffering from sleep disorder breathing, and the restless leg syndrome, again about 5 to 10% of the people. So this is the overview of the sleep disorders which we have so far.
I think we've had a great start there. We'll take a short break and be back with more information. Welcome back after the break. Dr. Khilnani, I'll continue with you now. We're wondering about what are the symptoms of a sleep disorder? I mean, how do I know whether I should go to a doctor that I have a sleep problem? you know, how does one, as a patient, as a layperson, analyze this for us?
So there are two ways. One, that patient comes to you, comes to me, that tells me that he has a sleep disorder. He is unable to sleep. He gets up in the middle of the night, or he gets up vivid dreams, he gets up frightening dreams, or the family says that he starts walking, or he says that he is unable to sleep, he has to walk like in restless leg syndrome. That is the one way. Or the person says that I had a car crash, I had an accident, I tend to sleep in the meetings, or I am unable to concentrate on my work. And other thing is that patient comes with hypertension, with diabetes, or he has got heart attack, and then you know that he's obese, he's overweight, and then we think that is sleep disorder is one of the factors. So these are the two things. Amrish, since you have asked about the symptoms, the main symptom of, I'll just focus on the sleep disorder breathing and go to insomnia later if you would like. The symptoms of obstructive sleep apnea, which occurs in the large proportion of patients, if you take American data, 14% of the adults, males, and 5% of females have sleep disorder breathing. 60% of them are obviously obese, but the 40% are there who are actually not obese. They have a variety of symptoms. The commonest symptom is daytime somnolence. The daytime somnolence means that they are watching TV, they go to sleep, they are talking, they are in the meeting, they go to sleep, they are unable to drive. Sometimes they have to stop their car to the side and have a small 2 minutes nap, and then they start driving. Commonest cause of car crash in United States is obstructive sleep apnea. But there are so many other symptoms which are actually not so well known. That means that these people tend to sleep immediately. As you know, the lag time is not there. They get up in the middle of the night several times and they go for urination, and since they are usually past middle age or middle age, they attribute it to age, or sometimes they say, okay, I have some prostate problem, so I go to and they come back. And one of the common symptom about besides nocturia is frequently drinking water because their mouth becomes dry. Because of the obstruction in their airways, they tend to breathe through the mouth, and they go to the washroom, they come and drink water, they sleep for a while. Quite a few symptoms are reported by the bed partner. What is called as witness choking. That is very important. Of course, the loud snoring, it disturbs. I know of the couple, they've decided to sleep in the separate rooms because the one person is snoring louder. Besides that, the witness choking is what happens that as the sleep becomes deeper, the snoring becomes louder and louder, and suddenly it stops. It stops because there is a complete obstruction to the airways. And then there is a waking up as a subconscious. Classically, they shake like this, and then they start breathing, again the snoring starts. This will be reported by the bed partner because this person will not wake up. But sometime, when in the severe apnea, they actually wake up and sit down for a while, then they again go back to the sleep. One of the most important symptoms which I have said at the beginning is unrefreshing sleep. As you said, Amrish, in the beginning, that what are the symptoms is that they think that they have slept for 7 hours or 8 hours. They slept pretty well, longer duration of hours, but they wake up totally feeling disgusted because they don't feel fresh. They have a early morning headache. They don't feel like working, and it takes them for half an hour to 1 hour. Drink 1 cup of coffee, tea, then they demand another cup of coffee till the time they start feeling good. There is a severe loss of efficiency, and it has some long-term consequences also, like blood pressure, heart attacks, and also cognitive dysfunction, what is called as dementia. This will be the long-term outcome.
We'll look at that.
But main symptoms are these. Thank you.
थैंक यू. दीज आर वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट पॉइंट्स. और ये जानना ज़रूरी है कि कभी कभी ऐसा होता है कि आपको नहीं लगता कि नींद की कोई प्रॉब्लम. अधिकतर ऐसा होता है कि आपको ही लगेगा मुझे नींद नहीं आ रही, मेरी नींद खुल रही है रात को, मुझे नींद आती ही नहीं, मैं जल्दी उठ जाता हूँ या उठ जाती हूँ और रात भर उठना पड़ता है. कभी कभी ऐसा होता है कि हमको नहीं मालूम होता कि हमें स्लीप की प्रॉब्लम है. हमको लगता है दिन में थकान लग रही है या सुस्ती लग रही है. नींद से डायरेक्ट रिलेशनशिप हम नहीं कर पाते. मैं जानता हूँ एक ऐसे चीफ एग्जीक्यूटिव ऑफिसर को, सीईओ को, जो कि अपनी बोर्ड मीटिंग में सो गए और सबने कहा बहुत काम किया, प्रिपेयर किया रात भर, इसलिए शायद नींद आ गई. तो ये जो जैसे आपने बताया, इवन रोड ट्रैफिक एक्सीडेंट्स कैन बी लिंक्ड टू दिस एंड इट्स नॉट अनकॉमन. तो ये जानना ज़रूरी है हमें कि कई बार जो हमको लगता नहीं कि स्लीप से कनेक्टेड है, वो चीज़, ऐसा सिम्टम भी हमें स्लीप की डिसऑर्डर की वजह से हो सकता है. तो अपने डॉक्टर से ज़रूर सलाह करनी चाहिए. अगर दिन में अधिक सुस्ती या दिन में नींद आना या बैठे बैठे काम पर नींद आना या खड़े खड़े नींद आना ऐसे होता है तो ज़रूर से डॉक्टर से संपर्क कीजिए. और हो सकता है कि आपको रात को नींद ठीक ना आती हो और पुअर क्वालिटी ऑफ स्लीप अगर रात को रहेगी तो दिन में ऐसा होगा ही. तो इसलिए दो तरह से है, या तो पेशेंट को ही स्लीप की तकलीफ हो, बताते हैं वो, और या फिर वो ना मालूम पड़े और किसी और तरह से मैनिफेस्ट करे. और इसके लॉन्ग टर्म इम्प्लीकेशन हम सब डिस्कस करेंगे. इसके पहले डॉक्टर आनंद मोहन से मैं ये पूछूंगा कि डॉक्टर सूरी ने बहुत अच्छे से इंसोम्निया एक्सप्लेन किया हमको. अक्यूट इंसोम्निया विच इज़ वेरी कॉमन, सभी को होता है कभी ना कभी, और क्रॉनिक इंसोम्निया. लेकिन इसकी वजह क्या होती है? इंसोम्निया की वजह क्या होती है कॉमनली हम लोग की लाइफ्स में? डॉक्टर मोहन.
Well, in insomnia, like already has been said, it is probably the one of the most common and prevalent sleep disorder that we know. Acute insomnia means कि कभी कभार because of some precipitating factor एकदम से sleep नहीं आने की वजह हो सकती है. So this is mainly because of again somatic factors. For example, अगर किसी को पेन हो रहा है, दर्द हो रहा है, हेडेक है या कहीं और बॉडी पेन या किसी भी तरह की फिजिकल परेशानी है तो उस वजह से नींद ना आने का कारण हो सकता है. और इट कैन बी सम साइकोलॉजिकल स्ट्रेस, चाहे तो वो काम रिलेटेड हो, सोशल फैक्टर्स हो या कोई और फैमिली प्रॉब्लम्स, काम पे प्रॉब्लम्स. सो एनी अदर मेंटल स्ट्रेस मे बी समथिंग बिकॉज ऑफ विच insomnia acutely may occur. So these are the two commonest causes of insomnia, acute insomnia per se. Usually that does not last for more than a day or two or maybe a couple of days. उसके भी साइड इफेक्ट्स थोड़े से होते हैं. नेक्स्ट डे टायर्डनेस रहती है, स्लीपीनेस रहती है, इनएक्टिविटी रहती है, परफॉर्मेंस लेवल्स गो डाउन, कंसंट्रेशन नहीं बनता. सो अगेन ऑल द अदर प्रॉब्लम्स, ड्राइविंग करने में दिक्कतें. तो ये अक्यूट प्रॉब्लम्स के कॉन्सिक्वेंसेस होते हैं. क्रोनिक तब होता है जब the insomnia persists, like already said, for at least say more than 2 to 3 times a week for several weeks, for even more than a month or 2 months. When the same problem is persisting beyond that time, then we call it a chronic asthma. Uske long term repercussions are separate. Of course, the acute repercussions remain, but then long term maybe, for example, development in young people, it may be leading to problems in the development of the brain, memory disturbances. Then there may be some psychological behavior disturbances. Depression is so common because of insomnia. So insomnia and depression are very closely linked to each other, especially chronic insomnia. So psychological effects then take over in the long run. Performance suffers, school performance, work performance suffers. So these are the long-term implications of chronic insomnia.
Or insomnia has a huge amount of implications for our hormones. In fact, disturbed sleep or disordered sleep often produces its chronic effects in particular through the hormonal pathway. So, for example, when we have disordered sleep, and we'll discuss that further, we do get problems with our hormones, like hormones that make us feel full, that initiate satiety. They are actually depressed, so you don't feel full even after eating. Hormones that stimulate appetite may actually increase. So certain abnormalities in our appetite regulating hormones can lead to several chronic disorders in people who are sleep deprived. So that's very important. Cortisol, the stress hormone. You know, cortisol is the stress hormone that keeps us in good health, and it's highest in the morning and lowest in the evening. But if your sleep is disordered, this whole rhythm of cortisol may get disturbed. Again, producing excessive appetite, in some disordered eating, and all kinds of things. So even testosterone, the hormone that makes a man, actually can be altered by disordered sleep. So it has huge implications in the metabolic aspect, which we're going to discuss now, but also it actually, a lot of the effects of chronic sleep deprivation are actually produced through hormones. We will now focus primarily in the second half of this program on obstructive sleep apnea, or sleep apnea as we say. But before that, I want to ask Dr. Suri, what is the connection? I mean, why pulmonary medicine and sleep disorders, all departments are called pulmonary medicine and sleep medicine. One would intuitively think should be sleep, should be psychiatry, or or neurology or something, but by and large, that is also there, but by and large, it is all pulmonary medicine and sleep. What's the connection?
See, first of all, I would like to say that sleep is a multidisciplinary branch. As I discussed about various sleep disorders, there are disorders which are related to the field of neurology. There are disorders which are related to psychiatry, like insomnias, restless leg syndrome, and parasomnias are related to the neurology field. But I think the first sleep disorders which were recognized in early 70s, that was breathing disorder in sleep. And this constitute the major chunk of sleep disorders, although now we know insomnia is more common than sleep disorder breathing. So sleep as a discipline of clinical medicine, clinical sleep medicine started with the evaluation of breathing disorders in sleep. So that means sleep is a time when your breathing becomes very low. It's a vulnerable period for patients with chronic respiratory disorders. So that's how it came, and a respiratory physician got involved, and the sleep laboratories were established to evaluate the polysomnography, the most common test, the sleep study is basically done to evaluate breathing disorder in sleep, and that's how the pulmonologists got connected with the with sleep for the evaluation of sleep disorder breathing, which is one of the most common disorder, which is the most researched disorder, most extensively, I would say, treated a disorder, where we have the
thank
experience.
You, sir. Yeah, thank you, sir, for that. And we will take a short break again and come back for the last segment, where we will be focusing only on obstructive sleep apnea.
Those in favor, please say aye.
जो सदस्य विरोध में ना गए,
I think the ayes have it.
हवालों के पक्ष में हुआ।
Ayes have it. The bill is passed.
Welcome back after the break, and I go to Dr. Khilnani now and ask him about, very quickly, what are the types of sleep apnea?
So largely it is divided into two. One is when the person is actually breathing well and there is an obstruction to the breathing. That is called obstructive sleep apnea. And second is that person is breathing less. That involves an obesity hypoventilation syndrome, and also some central sleep apnea and apneas which are associated with chronic heart failure. They also fall into that group. So first I will briefly discuss what is obstructive sleep apnea. Obstructive sleep apnea, as the name denotes, there is apnea due to the obstruction. That means that person's central system is good, his nervous system is good, is breathing well. This generally, as I said, 60% people are obese. So what happens that as the sleep becomes deeper, the muscle of the upper airways get relaxed, and because of that, the passage becomes narrow. Now, this passage, as the sleep gets deeper, that passage becomes more narrow and person starts snoring. Now, the sound is produced only when the airflow is through a narrow system. So, when this becoming narrow, then the snoring becomes louder and ultimately the breathing stops, and that is called apnea. When the breathing slows down, I did not go into the technical definition, it is called hypoapnea. And what is the result? The result is that person wakes up at a subconscious level, leading to fragmented sleep. There is reduction in the oxygen, that is if we do the polysomnography, it will, combining these two, there is when this apnea, hypopnea combined as we call it, if it is less than 5 per hour, we take it as normal. It is 5 to 15, it's taken as mild, 15 to 30 is moderate, and more than 30 is called severe apnea. The implication is that there are several times in an hour there is a reduction in oxygen saturation, which leads to several physiological effects like hypertension, the brain strokes, the diabetes gets worse, the cardiovascular diseases become more. And now I'll quickly, in the interest of time, go to what is the central sleep apnea or hypoventilation.
Just the definition.
Yeah. So the definition is that if you do a sleep study, the person's, there is no obstruction to the airflow, but the breathing slows down. There are two main causes. One is because of the obesity, what is called as obesity hypoventilation syndrome, traditionally called as Pickwickian syndrome because of the history that it was. And there are other causes of central sleep apnea, which is because of the neurological conditions. I don't think at this forum I'll go into that part. Thank you.
So I'll now move to Dr. Anant. And Dr. Anant, I'll ask you, what are the causes and risk factors for this obstructive sleep apnea syndrome?
Several causes and risk factors are there, among which probably the commonest and the most important would be obesity, the BMI. So obstructive sleep apnea is associated with obesity in a large proportion of patients, at least 60 to 70% of the patients. Although, of course, the remaining, it can happen in normal weight people as well. But this is a very strong association. It also has an association with more common in male genders up to the middle age. After say around 45, 50 years of age, probably a little more common in females, but again, mostly in males. With age also, it's mostly a disease of the middle age, and it tends to level off after the age of 60. But in 40 to 60 years, usually it is diagnosed. Then has a strong association with other comorbid illnesses like diabetes, especially uncontrolled diabetes, has an association with the OSA, hypertension, and hypothyroidism are two other diseases which have a strong association, significant association with the presence of obstructive sleep apnea. So any ways in which a person comes with those comorbid illnesses, then it's a good idea to ask some common symptoms to a patient to try and screen and then diagnose, because many times it may not be picked up, or if you don't do so, it may not be picked up early. And by the time it starts manifesting in the patient, he may already be in a very advanced stage. So these are the main common risk factors associated with this disease.
Thank you, Dr. Anant. I'll move to you, Dr. Suri. We understood what is obstructive sleep apnea. We've understood what are the causes or risk factors. What are the consequences? Some of them have been discussed. Can you enumerate like 1, 2, 3, 4?
Yeah, the consequences of obstructive sleep apnea are quite serious, both on the immediate basis as well as on the long-term basis. As Dr. Khilnani just described, that a patient with obstructive sleep apnea stops breathing in sleep. And when he stops breathing for more than 10 seconds, that's where we defined apnea. The apnea means no breathing during sleep for more than 10 seconds. And if a patient stops breathing, what happens? The oxygen level goes down, the carbon dioxide builds up, and this apnea is terminated by an arousal. So three things are happening: low oxygen, there is an increase in carbon dioxide, and with arousal, as you mentioned, there are certain hormonal changes. Our sympathetic system becomes activated, and the adrenaline level suddenly shoot up, and that leads to increase in the blood pressure. So with each episode of apnea, there is an arousal and there is an increase in the blood pressure in sleep. So normally when we sleep, there is a 10% dip in the drop in our blood pressure, and in this case, in fact, the blood pressure increases. So what are the consequences? The consequences is, one, due to disrupted sleep, because for each apnea to be terminated, you have to wake up. So your sleep will be disrupted and it will not be deep. So you will not wake up fresh. You will feel tired, sleepy during the day, and and this sleepiness can affect your cognitive function in the sense that there is a problem in the memory, there is a problem in the performance, there are safety issues, particularly there is an increased risk of accidents, both the automobile accident as well as work-related accidents. It also affects your mood. The person who has not been slept well becomes more irritable, and they become more anxious, and there is also increased prevalence of depression. So these people tend to become more depressed because the happy hormones, the neurotransmitters which keeps our mood high, gets elevated with the normal sleep. And with sleep apnea, if the sleep is disrupted, these neurotransmitters levels change, and the person becomes more depressed, particularly if they are vulnerable to develop depression for this thing. So we have a lot of health issues. The health issues are, we have talked about the mental issues like increased anxiety and depression. Then there are physical health. Physical health issue is that there is an increase in blood pressure, because with each episode of apnea, there is an increase in blood pressure. So this, with multiple such episodes of high blood pressure, this thing is carried forward during the day, and more people start developing hypertension. So if you see severe cases of sleep apnea, more than 50% of them will have, in fact, more than 70% of them will have hypertension. And if you take patients of hypertension who are difficult to be controlled, so sleep apnea not only causes hypertension, but it makes it difficult to control also. So if you take resistant hypertension, that means a patient taking 3 or more than 3 drugs to control his blood pressure, and still the BP is not controlled, about 75% of them will have significant sleep apnea. So this patient needs to be looked into. The other thing which we mentioned was decrease in the oxygen levels. So not only they have decrease in oxygen level, but in between, when the apnea is terminated, they actually hyperventilate and their oxygen levels go up. And this increase in oxygen level and decrease in oxygen level both cause harm to our blood vessels. And these people develop obstructions in their blood vessels, what we call atheromatous plaques. And this makes
like
them
heart disease. I mean, things that lead to heart disease.
This makes them more vulnerable to develop coronary artery disease and heart attacks. They can also have increased risk of strokes. So those are the other risk factors these patients are
so very long list and serious list of disorders that can actually happen as a result of chronic obstructive sleep apnea. One of them, of course, is diabetes. As we know, obesity and diabetes, and this whole thing is very closely linked. People with diabetes have greater issues with sleep apnea. People with sleep apnea have greater chances of developing diabetes. Not only that, exactly in the same manner as you said for hypertension, we say that for diabetes. A diabetic who's not well controlled, despite all efforts and don't seem to find any reason, often actually has underlying sleep apnea. And that's one of the major reasons for poor control of diabetes, and therefore accelerated complications linked to the heart and others. And similarly, if when you're investigating sleep apnea, as pointed out by Dr. Mohan, investigating for thyroid is very important, because sometimes that's an easily manageable cause of sleep apnea and reversible cause of sleep apnea. Very quickly, how do you move towards diagnosis, sir? And just, we don't want the details because that's too much for the audience. Just how do we diagnose sleep apnea?
See, the diagnosis of sleep apnea is done by evaluating these patients in a sleep study, And what is a sleep study?
तो
The
स्लीप स्टडी जो आप सुनते हैं, स्लीप स्टडी आपके डॉक्टर ने बोला होगा बहुत बार. स्लीप स्टडी इज अ वे टू डायग्नोज sleep apnea, and Dr. Suri, it is called polysomnography.
polysomnography. The technical name for sleep study is polysomnography. The poly means when we record large number of parameters in which sleep is one, somno and graphy. So that means when we are studying multiple functions of the body during sleep and we are also recording sleep, we call it polysomnography. And we try to see the effect of sleep on breathing, because most of the time the most common indication for sleep study is evaluation of sleep apnea, and sleep apnea is a breathing disorder in sleep where person stops breathing or his breathing becomes very shallow. So we try to evaluate the effect of sleep on breathing. So we record sleep parameters by brain activities, muscle activities, and then we look into the breathing pattern. We see that what is the impact on oxygen, on the carbon dioxide, and then we see the effect on the heart. We also look into the effect on blood pressure, because with each arousal the BP fluctuates, and then we also look into the muscle activity. So there are number of parameters which are recorded, and then with this sleep study, not only we confirm the diagnosis that the patient has sleep apnea by counting the number of times the person stops breathing. And on the basis of the number of these
decide
events, what we
treatment.
call apnea means no breathing, hypopnea means shallow breathing, and when we put them together, then we see, as Dr. Khilnani rightly mentioned, we usually should not have more than 5 such episodes, you know,
In a normal
episodes of
person.
no breathing or shallow breathing in sleep. It should be less than 5 per hour. But once it becomes more than 5, like from 5 to 15, it is called mild, 15 to 30, moderate, and more than 30, it becomes very severe disease. So we tend, not only we confirm the diagnosis, but we also quantitate the severity of the disease, because the treatment of the condition
Will
depends
depend
on
the severity.
on the
Absolutely.
severity of the disease.
So one point here is that सब लोग बोलते हैं, हम लोग जैसे सलाह देते हैं पेशेंट को कि आपको सस्पिशन है स्लीप डिसऑर्डर का और आपकी ये जांच होनी चाहिए स्लीप स्टडी. तो एक लाइन में बताइए, कुछ लोग बोलते हैं घर पे भी हो सकती है, कुछ लोग बोलते हैं सिर्फ हॉस्पिटल या सेंटर्स में होनी चाहिए. तो क्या पेशेंट्स को घर पे स्लीप स्टडी का ऑप्शन लेना चाहिए फॉर कन्वीनियंस, और उससे हमें रिलायबल इन्फॉर्मेशन मिलती है, या हमेशा एक डेजिग्नेटेड सेंटर पे जाना चाहिए?
देखिए, ये एक बहुत ही इम्पोर्टेंट इशू है. ये होम स्टडीज़ का कंसेप्ट कैसे आया? होम स्टडीज़ का कंसेप्ट इसलिए आया कि यूनाइटेड स्टेट्स में जो वहाँ के स्लीप लैब्स थे और वहाँ पर स्लीप डिसऑर्डर्स के बारे में अवेयरनेस इतना बढ़ गया कि सडनली डिमांड फॉर स्लीप स्टडी इंक्रीज. तो वहाँ पर उनका जो वेटिंग पीरियड था
बहुत हो
वो 3 से 6 महीने से 9 महीने चला गया, जिससे क्या हुआ कि जो सिवियर डिजीज के केसेस थे, द सिवियर केसेस ऑफ स्लीप एपनिया could not be evaluated early
पहुंच ही नहीं पाए,
and was not given the benefit of early treatment. उस सिचुएशन में ये सोचा गया कि क्या हमारे पास कुछ एक अल्टरनेटिव, वो एक विकल्प है जिसमें अगर हम ये होम स्लीप स्टडी अगर कर सके और इवेलुएट कर सके एटलीस्ट जो सिवियर पेशेंट है, जिनको जो ट्रीटमेंट की अर्जेंसी है, तो उस केस में एक सिलेक्ट ग्रुप है. सभी को होम स्लीप स्टडी नहीं चाहिए. नॉट ऑल पेशेंट शुड बी एडवाइज्ड होम स्लीप स्टडी. इट इज ओनली those patients who have a severe disease. That means आप ये पूछेंगे कि अभी तो हमने जांच ही नहीं की, तो हम severe disease कैसे कह सकते हैं? तो ऑन द बेसिस ऑफ सिम्टम्स, एक वो कहते हैं प्री टेस्ट प्रोबेबिलिटी. तो हम टेस्ट करने से पहले ये हमारे को ऑन द बेसिस ऑफ सिम्टम्स वी कम टू नो दैट दिस पेशेंट इज लाइकली टू हैव ए सिवियर डिजीज. ऐसे पेशेंट और उनको कोई और कोमॉर्बिडिटीज नहीं है, जैसे हार्ट डिजीज नहीं है, रेस्पिरेटरी डिजीज नहीं है, दूसरा कोई स्लीप डिसऑर्डर नहीं है, तो ऐसे पेशेंट को बहुत केयरफुली स्क्रीन करके उन पेशेंट्स को हम होम स्लीप स्टडी कर सकते हैं. क्योंकि वो एक लिमिटेड स्टडी है और उसमें हम दूसरी चीजें मिस ना कर सके. तो केयरफुली सिलेक्ट करके होम स्लीप स्टडी हम कर सकते हैं कुछ केसेस.
तो बहुत अच्छी जानकारी दी आपने. थैंक यू वेरी मच. वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट इन्फॉर्मेशन. वी आर रनिंग आउट ऑफ टाइम, बट वी हैव 2 major points. One is for Dr. Anant, and that is about treatment strategies. Again, detailed treatment studies are beyond the scope of this program. But what are the treatment approaches 1, 2, 3, 4 that we adopt for these people? with obstructive sleep
Well,
apnea?
in a person who's established with the diagnosis of obstructive sleep apnea, the treatment of choice remains positive airway pressure therapy. Positive airway pressure therapy or PAP therapy means that there is a device, a small portable device, which is kept bedside, and it is attached by means of a tubing and a tight fitting mask. And that mask will have to be strapped onto the nose and the face and around the scalp and, on the face. And then this blows air at a particular positive airway pressure. It blows the air inside the face and the nose. So this basically helps to form a kind of a splint, because the basic mechanism of obstructive sleep apnea is during night all the muscles and the tongue and the muscles of the neck become loose, and they fall back and they block the airway, kind of choking him. So because of this, that block gets overcome and air goes inside. It helps to ventilate and to provide oxygen to the patient. So this is the most important therapy as far as obstructive sleep apnea is concerned. Apart from this, if there are the other measures, will be the other lifestyle related measures. For example, we have to treat other things also. This is not alone, may not be sufficient, and it is likely to be a lifetime therapy. So reduction of the weight, control of all the other comorbidities, thyroid, diabetes, hypertension, etc. A good lifestyle, avoiding excessive eating late at night. So these are the small things which are part of good practice, good habits, which must be reinforced to the patient. If this does not work, or if this is not available, or patient sometimes cannot tolerate, in some selected patients we have options of, say, mandibular devices. The mandibular devices means, suppose there is a chin which is falling back, then there are devices which can help. They are put inside, implanted inside. They can help to push the chin out so as to increase the air space behind to allow air to go in. So these are in some selected cases also can be done. So, and then there are surgeries. For example, if there is any obstruction to the nasal passage or the say the nose, there is a polyp, there are hypertrophic turbinates, there is a deviated nasal septum. Anything which may be contributing to this, that should be corrected in whatever way possible, even surgically if possible. So these are the main therapies which can be used for these particular patients.
तो क्या क्या हम ट्रीटमेंट कर सकते हैं स्लीप एपनिया का? सबसे इम्पोर्टेंट हमारा लाइफस्टाइल है. बहुत बार हमने देखा है ऐसा कि सिर्फ पेशेंट अगर अपना वजन कम करे, अपना वेट लॉस, हेल्थी डाइट, हेल्थी लाइफस्टाइल, रेगुलर एक्सरसाइज, टाइम से सोना, टाइम से खाना अगर फॉलो करेंगे तो उसी से काफ़ी हद तक रिवर्स हो जाता है स्लीप एपनिया. ये बहुत ज़रूरी है जानना. और उसके अलावा डिवाइसेस के बारे में, जैसे आप सब जानते हैं, ये मशीन्स जो यूज़ होती हैं आजकल, ये बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट हैं. इसके लिए सर्जरी के इंडिकेशंस कम हैं. बहुत स्पेसिफिक केसेस में या रिफ्रैक्टरी केसेस में ही सर्जरी एडवाइस की जाती है. इट्स नॉट द फर्स्ट स्टॉप for a patient seeking relief from obstructive sleep apnea, but it can be considered and can be beneficial in a limited number of cases. But most cases are managed either by lifestyle and or by use of devices. A last point for Dr. Khilnani to leave messages for our viewers. तो ये एक चीज़ हम लोग यूज़ करते हैं, लोग जानते नहीं है, स्लीप हाइजीन. हम लोग आपस में अक्सर यूज़ करते हैं, भाई अपनी स्लीप हाइजीन ठीक करिए. तो स्लीप हाइजीन क्या मतलब है?
नहीं, देखिए ऐसा है कि जैसे हाइजीन होती है हर चीज़ के लिए, सफाई के लिए, खाने के लिए, स्लीप हाइजीन जैसे डॉक्टर सूरी ने बताया कि इंसोम्निया इज़ मोस्ट कॉमन. अब ऐसा कोई आदमी नहीं है जिसकी कभी स्लीप डिस्टर्ब ना हुई हो, लेकिन जिसको क्रॉनिक इंसोम्निया होती है वो बहुत कॉमन होती है. आपके ओपीडी में, मेरे ओपीडी में, सबके ओपीडी में कि मुझे नींद नहीं आती. तो इसके लिए मैं कुछ बातें बताना चाहूँगा जो कि इंटरनेशनली रिकग्नाइज है. सबसे पहली बात तो ये है कि आपका स्लीप टाइम अप्रॉक्सीमेटली फिक्स होना चाहिए. ऐसे नहीं कि किसी दिन आप सोचें मुझे 10 बजे सोना है, दूसरे दिन 12 बजे सोना है, किसी दिन, तो उसमें आपकी स्लीप डिस्टर्ब होगी. दूसरी बात है कि दिन में लंबा कभी नहीं सोना चाहिए. आप अगर 2 घंटे दिन में सोते हैं तो रात को नींद एक्सपेक्ट मत करें कि समय से आएगी. पावर नैप आदमी ले सकता है. तीसरी बात यह है कि शाम को 5 या 6 बजे के बाद कोई भी कैफिनेटेड ड्रिंक नहीं, उसमें चाहे कोक हो, चाहे टी हो, चाय हो, चाहे कॉफ़ी हो, वो अवॉइड करना चाहिए. चौथी बात यह है कि आपका रात का जो खाना होना चाहिए वो थोड़ा हल्का होना चाहिए और आपके बेड टाइम से करीब 2.5-3 घंटे पहले ख़त्म कर देना चाहिए. और सोने से पहले आपको भूख हो तो आप दूध पी सकते हैं या कुछ लाइट फ्रूट लेके सो सकते हैं. इससे
बहुत इम्पोर्टेंट पॉइंट है. हाँ. क्योंकि अर्बन इंडियन लाइफस्टाइल में रात का खाना is the last thing,
देर से खाते
and
हैं।
people have
Heavy-
late dinners after
heavy meal।
finishing work, watch TV and just sink into the
मल्टी
sofa.
कोर्स डिनर होता है, वो नहीं होना चाहिए। उसके बाद जो इंसोम्निया का एक इम्पॉर्टेंट कारण है वो है स्क्रीन, टीवी स्क्रीन या मोबाइल का स्क्रीन या लैपटॉप का स्क्रीन। बेड टाइम के 1 घंटे पहले कोई स्क्रीन नहीं देखना चाहिए। ये थोड़ा मुश्किल है आज की लाइफस्टाइल में, लेकिन ये करना चाहिए। उसके बाद जब आप अगर आपको सच में इंसोम्निया की प्रॉब्लम है तो सोने से पहले अगर आप गर्म पानी से शॉवर ले लेंगे जस्ट बिफोर स्लीपिंग, देन यू विल स्लीप वेल। अब इसके अलावा एक बात और है कि सपोज आप सो गए और आपको नींद नहीं आ रही है 15-20 मिनट के लिए, टेंडेंसी ये होती है कि आप उठ के फिर अपना मोबाइल देखने लग जाते हैं, कोई मैसेज तो नहीं आया उसका जवाब दे देते हैं, या टीवी ऑन कर देते हैं या अपना लैपटॉप। ये बहुत गलत है। आपको अगर उठ के हैं तो आप थोड़ा वॉक कर लें या किताब पढ़ लें। सोने से पहले किताब पढ़ना एक बहुत अच्छी आदत है। अगर उससे भी स्लीप क्वालिटी इम्प्रूव होती है। मिडल ऑफ द नाइट पे भी नींद खुल सकती है किसी चिंता की वजह से, तो उठ के कभी भी आप टीवी या उसको ना देखें, कुछ पढ़ लें या थोड़ा बहुत वॉक करके वापस हो जाएं, आपकी नींद कहीं नहीं जाएगी। लेकिन जिसको बहुत ज़्यादा तकलीफ हो, शॉर्ट टर्म के लिए शॉर्ट एक्टिंग दवाइयाँ होती हैं, वो डॉक्टर की सलाह से ले सकते हैं, लेकिन कोशिश करके 2 हफ्ते से ज़्यादा ना लें, क्योंकि सारी ये दवाइयाँ जो होती हैं वो एडिक्टिंग होती हैं और हैबिट फॉर्मिंग होती हैं।
नींद की दवाइयाँ हैबिट फॉर्मिंग होती हैं, avoid
कई
ही
लोग
करनी
10-10 साल तक लेते रहते हैं, वो बिल्कुल गलत होता है। नींद ईश्वर ने हमें दी है एज अ नेचुरल गिफ्ट, उसको हम अगर ठीक से अपनी लाइफस्टाइल रखेंगे तो नींद कहीं नहीं जाती, वो ज़रूर आएगी।
2 पॉइंट सर पूछूंगा, बिल्कुल बंद समय एकदम समाप्त है हमारा, लेकिन 2 पॉइंट हैं, अल्कोहल एंड एक्सरसाइज।
हाँ, बहुत अच्छी बात
बताइए।
वो सॉरी मैं भूल गया था। ये एक धारणा होती है कि शराब पीने से अच्छी नींद आती है। शराब पीने से नींद शुरू जल्दी ज़रूर हो जाती है, लेकिन नींद के डिस्टर्बेंस में ज़्यादा होता है।
Disturbed sleep.
एक और भी चीज़ मैं भूल गया था, स्मोकिंग ऑल्सो विल डिस्टर्ब योर स्लीप। जो लाइफस्टाइल की बात है उसमें एक्सरसाइज इज़ वेरी हेल्पफुल इन स्लीपिंग, पर ये लोग जो 10 बजे रात को सोचते हैं ना कि अब जिम जाता हूँ मैं, एकदम हैवी एक्सरसाइज करने के बाद अच्छी नींद आने की संभावना कम होती है। एक्सरसाइज ज़रूरी है स्लीप एपनिया के लिए भी और अच्छी लाइफस्टाइल के लिए, अच्छी सेहत के लिए, लेकिन वो बेड टाइम पे नहीं करनी होती है। दिन में अगर एक्सरसाइज करेंगे तो आपकी नींद अच्छी होगी। शराब जो है वो नींद को डिस्टर्ब करती है, स्मोकिंग भी डिस्टर्ब करेगी। थैंक यू।
तो घूम फिर के बाद सब बेसिक मैसेजेस पे आ रही है। जो हमने डायबिटीज़ में बात करी, जो ब्लड प्रेशर में बात करी, जो हार्ट डिजीज़ में बात करी, वही चीज़ें हमारी नींद को भी इम्प्रूव करेंगी। टाइम से खाना, टाइम से सोना, अवॉइड करना इंटॉक्सिकेंट्स लाइक लिकर एंड सिगरेट्स, अवॉइडिंग रीडिंग लेट इनटू नाइट, avoiding watching TV. Reading is still okay, but avoiding watching television, screen time, all those things will make a difference to our life. And अगर हम कोशिश करें तो हम अपनी स्लीप पे नियंत्रण रख सकते हैं। स्लीप डिसऑर्डर्स बहुत कॉमन है, जैसे हमारे विशेषज्ञों ने बताया। उनके लिए डॉक्टर से सलाह ज़रूर करें। सबसे आसान तरीका एक दवाई खा के नींद लेना अवॉइड करें जब तक कि डॉक्टर उस बात को न बताए। बहुत सारे स्लीप डिसऑर्डर्स का निदान हो सकता है, दे कैन बी रिजॉल्व थ्रू प्रॉपर एडवाइस एंड ट्रीटमेंट। ये एक रिलेटिवली नई साइंस है, ये समझिए ये लास्ट 10-15 वर्ष से ही इसकी अंडरस्टैंडिंग इतनी बड़ी है। उसका फ़ायदा उठाएं, अपने डॉक्टर से बात करें। अगर पुअर क्वालिटी स्लीप या डिस्टर्ब स्लीप के साथ हम उसे इग्नोर करते रहेंगे और चलते रहेंगे तो आगे जाके हमारे मेटाबॉलिक इम्पैक्ट बहुत ज़्यादा होता है। तो हमें ब्लड प्रेशर, हार्ट डिजीज़, डायबिटीज़ सभी हो सकती हैं और उनको कंट्रोल करने में भी दिक्कत हो सकती है। तो अपना वज़न नियंत्रण में रखें, हेल्थी लाइफस्टाइल फॉलो करें, यही आज का मैसेज है। थैंक यू वेरी मच।